case while you make a call. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good. So we are all set up.
Okay.
Let's see.
Mila,
Hi, Mark.
thank you. I've called in on my telephone as well in the event that my video internet doesn't work. Is that all right?
Sure.
So I'm going
Yeah.
to unvideo and mute myself.
So you're the 8156.
Correct.
Okay, great.
And I've got my phone on mute, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. *6 to unmute myself.
On the phone. Yep, that's right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mila. Just in case my internet was bad like it was last time. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. Well, it is 4:01 and we have a quorum. Let's see here. I see Garish, Josie, Kevin, Obi, and myself. I'm just going to give it one more minute and then we'll go ahead and call to order.
Emily, which applicant was that?
Oh gosh, my brain's not going to find it now.
Neither.
Hold on, I've got it in my email.
Okay, Randy.
Randy, yes.
All right.
I'm glad you're
Just got it.
All right. Okay, so it's 4:02 and I'm going to call us to order. Mila is going to be quickly trying to get in touch with one of our applicants just to make sure that they're able to attend. So she might not be available, but we'll go ahead and call to order. Today's meeting is largely Planning Commission interviews, but if you are here, I don't see anybody who is currently a participant who would be here to speak other than interviewing. But if you're on YouTube and you would like to make a citizen comment during Citizens to be Heard, you're welcome to join now. And then we will, if there is interest, we will also make sure to save time for that after interviews if necessary. Okay, not seeing anybody express interest in that. We'll move on. Again, most of today's agenda is interviews, so I don't think there's necessarily anything that would require an ex parte communication or disclosure, but is there anything anybody wants to share, having maybe talked to any of the applicants or anything, or are we good to move forward there? All right, so we'll move on to approval of meeting minutes from November 23rd. Does anyone have any comments or concerns with the meeting minutes as included in our packet? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I second.
Okay, motion by Bob, seconded by Garish. All in favor of approving the minutes from November 23rd, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Brian, you're the only one I didn't get. Is that a yes? Yes, all right. Unanimous, confirming the minutes from November 23rd. Jaylyn, before we go into interviews, would you be so kind as to provide the county commission update?
I would be so kind. Good morning. Oh, sorry, it's afternoon there. Good afternoon, everyone. So we have a huge meeting tomorrow, but as far as updates on things that have already happened, I can't remember if I told this group about the USU virtual groundbreaking that happened mid-November. Of course, it was held virtually, so you can view a message from the USU president. If you go to usumoab.edu, I believe, you can view that. And they also have live cameras there, so you can actually watch the work as it progresses at that same website. Other than that, we started public hearings last week on the budget, the 2020 budget amendments, the 2021 proposed budget, and 2021 cost of living adjustments. And then for the huge agenda tomorrow, we thought it was going to be so big that we're starting at 2 o'clock rather than 4. And there are bets on how long it will take to get through it. We've got big, somewhat controversial public hearings on things that this commission sent to the county commission. So look forward to hearing that. There's Rally on the Rocks, approval of a letter to the organizer that if approved will deny that event permit along with findings on why it is being denied, and letters to the U.S. Forest Service and BLM that notify them of the changes that are happening in Grand County and on the moratorium on UHV, new businesses. There's the Dalton rezone that this group is all familiar with, and the small area plan, both public hearings that this group was intimately involved with. And there's also a public hearing on the special event ordinance amendments that will hopefully facilitate special event approval, give more certainty to organizers, and provide a level of safety and comfort, I guess you could say, for residents here and participants alike. That's all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Oh, I'm eagerly hoping to attend. So
Okay.
excited for resolution on some of the issues that this body has been deliberating on. So thank you, Jaylyn.
Right.
Any
Hey,
other questions?
Jaylyn.
Yes.
I don't know if we'll have a chance to see you again before you take off you're going to Japan, is that right?
I am in Japan. I've been here for almost 3 weeks.
Oh, you're in Japan. Well, anyway, thank you for volunteering to be the rep from the council and now commission with the planning commission. I just have a suggestion. I know that you guys have when you've got packets that are several hundred pages long and you meet every 2 weeks, and it's being on the county commission is kind of a full-time job. And a suggestion I would have is that plan on a meeting every week rather than bi-weekly. I think it would really save a lot of your time, and it's basically a full-time job for a lot of people, and you're getting paid for the work that you do. So just a suggestion from me would be to make life easier for everybody. And now that you're leaving, you can make any suggestions you want, but I think it would make the participation by the commissioners much more effective if they weren't in 6 or 7 hour meetings and trying to prepare for them every 2 weeks. But anyway, that's a suggestion that you can pass on if you feel like it or not.
Certainly worth passing along, and I will pass that along right now to the new Commissioner Walker, who will take office before the January 5th meeting. Thank you. It's been a, I guess pleasure might not be the correct word, but I have enjoyed my time as the Planning Commission liaison. As I've said before, maybe in private, but possibly in this meeting, it's very helpful to me as a commissioner to have been in these meetings so that I've heard the conversations, heard the rationale behind why certain recommendations are being passed along or not. And when there is a big, long, 20, 30, 100 pages of a project that ultimately goes to the county council, it gives that commissioner a head start. So for their own commission meetings, if they've already been in this meeting. So I've appreciated it. I think this is a great board. It's engaged, passionate about what they're doing, and I've appreciated working with you all.
Well, we're grateful for you, Jaylyn. Thank you for all your service. And I hope tomorrow is beautiful where you are, and stay well. All right. Any other comments for Jaylyn? Otherwise, we will move on.
Only, thank you, Jaylyn. Great working with you and great that you served on the county council, commission and council.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So we are going to move on to the Planning Commission interviews, which is not our first time we've done this over Zoom, but we do have many interviews. So a couple things about how we're going to run this. So first of all, it is in our bylaws that we normally do a voice vote, but the chair has the option for a blind written ballot. We will be doing blind text ballots in lieu of written ballots. And as part of that, if every commissioner could do one of two things before we go forward, either text Mila, and her number is in our email. We're not going to post that up on the screen, but send Mila a text, just a test text, or alternatively, from the chat sidebar in Zoom, you can change from sending a chat to everybody in the meeting to sending one to Mila directly, in which case it would be private to her. Could everyone just send a text or message just to make sure we all have that, because that's how we're going to do our blind voting. And Mila, let me know when you've heard from everybody.
If you text me, could you identify yourself? Also, that would be helpful.
I might already need help. I've got the chat. How do I make sure it goes to Mila only?
So on the bottom of the chat interface,
Yep.
you'll see a button.
Says
or a little-
everyone, doesn't it?
Yep. So select on that and click on that
Got
and
it.
select Mila, and then you should be
Thank
able
you.
to, yeah. And then it'll default to that. So if you turn around and want to send something to the full group, just know you'll need to change that back.
Okay, so I've got Garish, Josie, and Emily are all good on the Zoom chat.
Okay.
Got a text from Brian and Kevin and Rachel.
Okay. And I think OB is coming in on Zoom.
Got it. Yep.
Perfect. Success. We're all going to get this software down pat and then hopefully get vaccines and be able to meet in person again. Just in time.
So,
Okay.
Mila, did you get mine?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. And
On the
all you
Zoom-
have to do to do it is to send it is just type it and then hit your enter.
Yes. Yep,
Good.
that's right.
Thank you.
All good.
Okay. All right. So with that, just to kind of give a quick overview of how we're going to run this, and then we'll go into interviews. At least one of our applicants is not able to join till 5, given the volume of interviews. I am sure that our interviews will run into that hour, so that'll be fine. But otherwise, we're going to try and just run through them alphabetically just for the sake of ease. I believe, I haven't gone back and double checked, but I believe everybody claimed a question or said that they had a question in mind. So for the applicants, and this is in our bylaws, we'll go round robin and everybody will ask one question and give you a chance to answer, and we'll ask the same questions of every applicant. So we'll start by asking you to introduce yourself. For the sake of timing, we're not going to put you on a timer, but I would appreciate it if you would keep it kind of in that 3-minute window or so. Of course, we've also had a chance to review your application. So anything you put in there, we've already seen. Then we'll go round table, we'll ask questions. Commissioners are allowed to ask a follow-up just contextually, just to make sure that we understand your response, but we are going to try and avoid crosstalk or additional questions that could give some applicants a different experience than others. We won't be discussing the merits of any individual applicant or application. After everybody has a chance to be interviewed, we will do a round of blind voting. Now, going into next year, we have 3 open seats. One is currently held by a commissioner and the 2 are being vacated. So we will do our first ballot where everybody will vote for, I think I said 3, we'll put our top 3 down. At the end of that vote, if we have clear recommendations, then we'll move forward there. If we need to break any ties, we'll do another vote on those ties. And I do just want to be clear that the Planning Commission is a recommending body. We will send our recommendations through the County Commission, but ultimately it's the County Commission that votes on appointments. So in the, I guess it would be tomorrow tacked onto the agenda, if not, no, January 5th?
It'll be January 5th because we need to have the recommendations as part of the packet.
Okay, so the January 5th County Commission meeting is when the final vote will be taken. County Commission generally takes a recommendation, but they are not required to do so. So just so you all know how this process works and the role of this group in appointing new board members. So with that, I see a few of our applicants are currently in chat. And if you are an applicant and you are on YouTube, this would be a wonderful time to hop into the Zoom call and join us. But Makeda, you are...
Emily, before we
Yes,
get started, I mean, Mila maybe knows more about this than I do, but I know at least one of the applicants, the link that they received wasn't working for this meeting. And so I don't know if that...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they all have the right one now.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that that
Mhm.
wasn't an issue. Okay.
I see 4 of our applicants currently on, and then 1 I know is joining us at 5. So
Mhm.
do we know about the other 2? Have we had any communication with them?
No. No, we have not, but I will check in with them again and make sure that they are all set. We do have, I believe, the first at least 1, 2, 3, 4 alphabetized. So we have a little time before those folks need to join us anyway.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions or comments before we invite our first applicant to come off of mute? Okay.
Well, I would say if you can get them to come off mute and also to turn their video on, I think it would be good for us to see them face to face.
Perfect. I know that one of the applicants said at the beginning of the meeting that they're not positive about the stability of their internet. So we will ask you to come and to share your video, but if you're unable to do so, understood. But that's a really great call out, Garish. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, Makeda Barkley, if you'd like to come off of mute, and please correct me if I'm not pronouncing your name right, and I'm sorry if that's the case.
Hi there. Yeah, it's Makeda, but
Makeda.
it's a
I'm so
common
sorry.
name.
I knew that.
You're good.
All right, so Makeda, I'd love if you would first just take a few minutes to introduce yourself to the commission.
Sure. So first things first, my internet is usually pretty good, but once in a while it'll just be really crappy. So if I bleep out, just let me know. So yeah, my name's Makeda. I have lived in Moab for about 4 years now, and I work at the Art Center, the Mark. So technically I work for the city. And I spend a lot of my time gardening and volunteering in different community groups throughout Moab. And I just recently bought my first home here in Moab back in October. So I am a relatively new member to Moab, 4 years, but
Wonderful. You cut there at the end, and I wasn't sure if that was me or if that was you, but I heard you've been here for
4 years.
4
And
years.
I plan to be here for a while. So yeah.
Perfect. Lovely. Well, so the way that we will run this is we're just going to go round table with questions, and I'm just going to do it right around the loop that I see people's faces on Zoom, and I'll take the caboose spot. So Kevin, if you'd like to kick us off with your question. Is Kevin frozen? Is it me? Nope, there you are.
Sorry
Shoot.
about it. My internet has also been temperamental today. I was saying I didn't send out my question ahead of time, so if this question overlaps with someone else's, let me know and I'll think of something else. But my question is, what do you see as being the important issues over the next year or two for in terms of land use code planning commission in the county?
I think some of the priorities things that need to be really focused on for planning and zoning purposes are obviously the hot topic of affordable housing needs to continue to be a priority. But I think they seem pretty obvious, and it seems like you guys in the county have kind of already been, and the city have been moving in that direction. But yeah, the affordable housing issues, transportation. So where things are getting put in and who's being affected by that, and limiting hotels and trying to diversify our zoning so that different kinds of businesses and community amenities can be installed, and that's not all of our spaces being taken up by one specific part of the economy, I guess.
Wonderful. Rachel, I see you next.
Okay, my question is, why are you interested in applying for this position?
Yeah, so I am also from a small town, and I think it's really important to be involved in your community pretty actively. And so since I've moved here, I've been really active in trying to do what I can to keep the quality of life in Moab good and fulfilling. And I think being on the Planning Commission is a good way to be an active participant in the decisions that are being made that affect us all. And I think making these decisions is really hard. And I think it takes a lot of empathy and different perspectives and different lived experiences. And I think that I can bring a perspective of kind of a different generation and maybe a different experience. And I also I feel like I have a lot of different areas and different experiences in living in Moab in the short time that I have. And I think it's a good way for me to be involved and to help give back and help be an active participant in this community.
Brian? Oh, double mute.
Here. Okay. What are your views of the planning? What are your views of the planning effort in Grand County right now? And in your opinion, what quantity of planning should be done?
I guess I don't, can you re-say that again? I
Yes,
wasn't quite clear what you're asking me.
What are your views of the planning effort in Grand County? Let's start with that.
Okay. I think the planning in Grand County has been going in a really good direction in the last couple of years, and I've been really supportive and trying to do my best to be involved in the advocacy and involvement on the community level with that. And I think it's been really good. I think the county commissioners have done a really good job of listening to the community and trying to be pretty equitable and focused on how to keep the quality of life in Moab good, and also help out the different business owners and interests in town. So I think it's headed in a really good direction.
Okay. And I won't ask the second part. I'll just do the first part for everybody.
Josie, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of ad lib a question because mine was very similar to Kevin's. And I think
Sorry about that, Josie. It was my fault.
It's okay. And I think this will be similar to Garish's question as well, in terms of tensions of community needs. And one that I can think of currently is the tension between the need for affordable housing and therefore potentially higher density, and a traditional kind of rural character of Moab that many people are really hold close to their hearts. So I wonder what you think about that particular tension, and if you can think of other possible gray areas of how community at large can get its needs met through development and planning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like this is a really good question, because obviously there's not a clear answer to it. I think it's really important to give everybody voice to be heard, and to really consider and kind of sit on people's feedback about what their vision for the community is from people in the community. And everyone has, like you said, there's the rural tension of wanting to keep the character of Old Moab, and then kind of the necessity of changing a little bit because of how things are here. It's clearly changed a lot in the last 10 years, let alone longer. And so I think it's one of those things of trying to compromise with everybody and find an in-between where we can. And I think that's been being done pretty well so far. And it seems like plans are being made to continue to do that in a way that doesn't hurt everybody and doesn't make everybody upset, but also kind of provides answers. And so I think having some areas that are higher density, but still not, skyscrapers or super huge buildings is a really good idea. And doing that in areas that maybe aren't established to having a certain kind of character. There's these old neighborhoods that kind of have these really nice cultures to them that people are really passionate about holding on to. And so being creative and finding places for these high density zones to go in where it's not going to disrupt everybody's way of life, but it's also going to provide the housing access that we need. So I think it's about creativity and compromise, really, and trying to find a way to work with the community to identify zones where people would maybe be okay with that happening.
Cool, thank you.
Garish? Oh, unmute.
So my question will be similar to Josie's in some ways, but as you are probably aware, there is a tension between, sometimes there's a tension between public interest and public rights versus private property rights. And in our land use code, there are certain things that are used by right, and some things are conditional uses, and some things are provided for by the county commission with a variance that can be given. So I just want to get your ideas about, in your mind, how do you sort out the public interest from private property rights?
Yeah, another sticky one for Moab. I think it's one of those issues where it's, on one hand, we want to respect people that have private property. They own their property. They should be able to do what they want with their property, and have some decent freedoms within our land use code and with the zoning that affects their property. But I think also being conscientious of how their neighbors are going to be affected by what they're doing on their property and how the community at large is going to be affected by what they're doing on their property, and kind of weighing those against each other. And so I think that's kind of the best analogy I can give for my thoughts on this issue is if you want to do something with your private property and your neighbors are going to be really adversely affected by that, that's something that's really serious and worth considering working around or coming up with a compromise for that, because I think it's not a clear-cut issue of your private property. You should do whatever you want, whenever you want, regardless of what's happening. And at the same time, I think you should be able to do what you want most of the time, unless it's going to adversely affect your community or your neighbors. And I think it's just a matter of being empathetic to people around you and to your community and trying to work together to find a solution that'll make the private property owners and the public interest find the best fit and solution to that they can.
All right, OB.
So here's a question. Of course, you've answered parts of it already probably, but what in your background and your skills probably most recommend you for having a position on the Planning Commission?
Sure. I mean, I am fairly young, and so I haven't had a whole lot of time to garner the experience that some of the other applicants may have, just from being around longer than I have been. I recently went through buying a home here on my own without any, outside help or whatever, and had to kind of navigate the house buying process here and the affordability and all that stuff. And so I have firsthand experience with the struggles that come with living in Moab. I've rented here quite a bit. I work for the city, and so I'm really interested in this topic. So I spend a lot of time thinking about the planning and the zoning that's happening in Moab, and thinking about all the different sides of it and who's being affected, and hearing all the different complaints and issues come up against each other, and all that seemingly, there's a lot of emotions in it, basically. So I think that I am really good at managing different perspectives and really taking them all into account and not letting my own prejudice or my own opinions get in the way necessarily all the time. And so I think that's, excuse me, sorry. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is just I'm able to be pretty diplomatic about things and consider all different aspects, but I also have participated in a lot of community groups and gone through the house buying process here. So that's kind of the basis of it, as I'm fairly young, so.
All right, and I will wrap us up. The Planning Commission is an advisory body, meaning we don't make the laws and regulations. We provide recommendations to the County Commission.
Mhm.
And we cover many different types of planning, from very tactical to longer range visionary planning. So thinking of us as a advisory body, how does that change the way that you might think about the role that we can play in our community?
Sure. I don't know if that really changes, because I am aware that it's an advisory body. And so I'm kind of coming into this understanding that it's, we're purely making recommendations for the commissioners to take and either accept or reject. And so I think that's a really valuable part of it, is to be able to have that, the ability to have kind of a say in it, but not have to have the ultimate decision in it, and being able to just provide some kind of recommendations and be kind of a consultation for the county commissioners, basically, and being that connection between the community voice and the county commissioners, I think, is probably the most attractive and valuable part of this commission.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any follow-ups that are pressing? Otherwise, we'll move on to our next applicant. Okay, Makeda, thank you very much for your time. You're welcome to hang out on the Zoom or drop and watch YouTube. We'll be voting after we've gone through all the interviews, which I imagine will take a little while longer, but we will be voting this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, guys, for your time.
Cheers. All right, so one of our applicants has a pressing commitment that they need to leave for, so we are going to just move them up really quick. Is he on the line, Mila?
He has not joined quite yet. He is getting, he's getting connected as far as I know.
Okay. Do you know what time that this person will need?
He should be joining us any second now.
Okay. So we'll just give that 20 seconds or so before we move on. Just while we're waiting for him, I think now that we all have our questions and we have our order, we can just sort of trail each other. Don't wait for me to intervene.
Hopefully he's going to be here in just a second.
Okay. If not, I am going to move us forward.
Yeah.
So.
No worries.
Okay.
So.
All right, Mila, I am going to move us on, but
okay.
If possible, and he can stay, we'll bring him in after this applicant.
Sure.
So our next, sorry, go ahead. Did you say?
Oh, no, sure.
Okay. So Steve Evers. There you are. Hello, Steve.
Hello.
So you've seen this now, the drill go through once. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes just to introduce yourself, and then starting with Kevin, we'll each ask you a question.
Sure. My name is Steve Evers. I live here in Moab, clearly. Been here for about nine years or so, going on 10 this upcoming spring. I live kind of on the side of the hill here with my wife and our dog in a little shipping container. And I know we've got a lot of other people, so I'll just stop talking and start answering some questions.
Okay. Hi, Steve. What do you see as some of the most important issues that the Planning Commission and Grand County are going to face with respect to planning over the next year or two?
Sure. I see kind of not necessarily in order, but more or less, I see the need to make decisions that encourage economic development, economic diversification, affordable housing, quality of life for our residents, and transportation.
Okay.
Let me know if you want me to elaborate. I can be pretty straightforward to the point.
Could you say just another sentence or two about what you mean by transportation?
Sure. What I mean by that, I know we have talks about, and this is probably more on the county council commission side of things, the transport corridor of Spanish Valley Drive and trying to make that more pedestrian friendly. I've heard there are talks potentially about the Murphy Lane corridor as well, so I'd love to see that included. And then in reference to the Mill Creek pathway, potentially extending some pedestrian paths there, and also the issue of potentially adding in some public transportation. I know that's been talked about. It's on the radar. They're collecting input from citizens currently, and so yeah, that's what I mean in reference to transportation.
Okay. And then what's your interest in applying for this appointment?
Sure. So I guess I'm just pretty passionate about planning. I've lived in several other comparable towns, across the U.S. specifically. So like the Crested Butte area, the Roaring Fork Valley, so Aspen. My wife lived in Telluride. She lived in Park City. We have firsthand experience of what it feels like to just be, kind of shut down in terms of being able to, have a sustainable life in those areas. And Moab, it's kind of, we've been on that precipice for quite a while now of, being, kind of deemed that tourist town that, kind of locals and, regular everyday folks that can't afford their second, third, fourth home kind of get pushed out. And so I'd say passion to help steer the community in a way that I think is prudent and called for all of our residents here. I certainly have that. In addition, I think just my previous experience kind of sets me up to be in a unique position to offer a lot to this commission. And I feel like that's probably going to get touched on another question. So I could speak to my experience now, or I could hold off to another question.
Yeah, I think you can wait.
Okay.
So you done? Okie dokie. So Steve, what are your views of the planning effort so far in Grand County?
I would say more or less I've been really pleased with them. Specifically the high density housing overlay that the commission had a part in crafting. I think that's a fantastic idea. I know, it does have its controversy with some folks, and that's totally understandable. I just think that was really well crafted. It saw the need, and it was thoughtful in the approach to solve the need, and being more homes that are in range of people to purchase. I also think that what the commission has done in terms of the regulations put in place for overnight rentals, I love that. It proves that this commission is being thoughtful. We're looking forward and doing what we can to have development in a thoughtful way. Like, development is going to happen. It seems like we're embracing that, and I personally like that. I think it's prudent. After all, we live in Utah. We have a use by right state. I love the idea of us giving some goalposts and some things to aim for developers that can frankly come in and otherwise kind of do what they want. So in summation, I've been pretty darn pleased with the direction that the planning is going. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to try to save this question in the same way that I did for Makeda, Steve. But basically, my question is around potential conflicts in community interests, or things that could be perceived as conflicts of community interest. And the example that I gave was like high density affordable housing versus a love of rural character. So things that both community members and potential property owners might each want, that might be opposing. What are your thoughts of kind of managing those tensions in the realm of planning and development? Sure.
To go back to that HDHO, the high density housing overlay example, I feel like I'm pretty intimately familiar with this. My wife and I think we kind of are categorized as amateur developers right now. We bought, the property that our home sits on is about 2.5 acres. And, we've been through these planning commission meetings. We've gone to a few of them for the entire process of getting approved for this overlay. And, we reached out to our neighbors, and then also there's obviously the public hearing. And one thing that stood out to me was, how are we going to be received by our neighbors, with that whole question of rural character versus higher density housing. We were fortunate in that no one around us had any issues with it. So that's probably the best case scenario, right? Is that public hearing goes up, nobody has an issue, win-win, nobody's affected. Now, I recognize that is not always going to be the case. I know that some folks are already upset just by being next to a lot that has the potential to tap into this overlay. And so I am really aware that, for that overlay to be applied, it has to be granted, first probably a favorable review by this committee, and then it has to pass the commission. I'm going to lean on public comment. I have a really good idea of this process. I'm not sure what our public, if we hear from the public first before this commission, or if that's a council thing. But certainly that is something to be aware of, and seeing, you know, what is in the pipeline. What else do we have? Are there other projects that are, you know, on the way to provide more housing that is either not necessarily affordable, but within a, you know, a respectable price range? You know, having an idea of that and letting that guide the decision as well, because, you know, while we can't make everybody happy, I'm darn well gonna try to. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's that balance of, you know, really trying to find what is the best choice for the most people that also balances, you know, place and environment as well.
Garish?
Okay, Steve, good to see you again.
Likewise.
Hey, I don't know if you remember my question, but it's in some ways it's similar to Josie's. There's an inherent tension at times between public interest, public property rights, and private property rights. Do you have any idea how you would kind of sort out and come to a conclusion when there's that conflict between various property rights interests? And as you know, because I think you probably became aware of our land use code, there are uses that are by right in our code. You can build certain things on certain size lots. There are some things that are allowed if you get a variance. Typically those are setbacks and whatnot. But anyway, in your mind, if it's not a clear, or if you were going to make a recommendation to the county commission on a particular project, how do you weigh public interest and private property interest?
Well, I could take a long time to answer this question. So I'll try to be as condensed as I can. So I think there's quite a few things that go into public interest. You know, you've got people and their immediate quality of life and how they're going to directly be affected. And then there's also kind of the indirect effect as well. What I'd love to see is an emphasis on what sort of diversification of industry and the economy, aside from just, you know, tourism industry, can be brought to Moab. So that way, you know, that quality of life can be increased or bettered. And the reason the context in which I mean to bring that up is, you know, being here for almost a decade now, there were many winters where, you know, it's, you know, or you know, we're coming into fall and it very much is the winter is coming type mentality, because, you know, I just couldn't get work. And I've been, you know, you know, spring is starting to roll around and I'm looking at the bank account. I'm thinking, okay, all right, I need the tourists to start coming, or, you know, work needs to start back up. So I think that plays a part of it. And so what I mean to say by all of that is that, you know, quality of life can be quite a large range that, you know, might even have some opposing viewpoints in it. And looking at your question again is how do I kind of put public interest versus private interest? You know, I think as a commission, there's certain things that we can do to nudge people, you know, in a good direction. You know, if it's a use by right kind of scenario, if I have an unfavorable recommendation, at the end of the day, it might not mean anything really, as that goes to the county council. A project may be able to go through because they legally can do that. And so what I would aim to do through what I think is a strength of mine is collaboration, is kind of nudge, you know, those, you know, the private interests in a way that kind of stands up for the quality of life of our residents and, you know, the public good. Because when we're in a situation where, you know, a developer or private interest can really do what they want because of use by right, I want to kind of extend that olive branch and bring them to the table to help, to take into consideration some things that would be better for the public.
Thank you. And I think it's my turn. Very good. Now I'll know who I follow. So Steve, what in your background and in your skills would recommend you most for the position on the Planning Commission?
Having my time here in Moab, I've worked in several different fields. I've been in education, I've been in outdoor guiding, I've been in the construction world, and along with that, more personally with this kind of amateur developer side of things. All through that process, I've tried to really give back to the community and integrate. And so I've done some volunteer work with Grand County Hospice for about 3 years. This last year, I was one of the volunteer coaches helping with the Red Devils mountain bike team. And through all of those different avenues, I feel like I have a pretty diverse perspective on people here in Moab and what they're looking for, how they've experienced change, what they want Moab to look like. I mean, I got to say, it's pretty cool to, be sitting with somebody in hospice that, has either been here for 40 years or was born here, and, hearing their stories of how they've seen change, their perspective on it. And so I think a strength of mine is collaboration, and, you can't really collaborate unless you listen to people. And I've been listening for about a decade, and I take that in. And, that's kind of what I would see my role in on the commission, is listening to people and taking that and kind of diffusing it outward.
Thank you.
All right, and final question from me. The Planning Commission is a recommending body, meaning that we pass our recommendations on to the County Commission, but ultimately the County Commission are the ones who vote and form our governance in our county. Knowing that as a recommending body, how does that change the way that you see the role of this body, whether it's for short-term planning or for long-term planning?
I don't really think it changes my perspective on that, because I kind of know that, or that's what I understand I'm getting myself into. And so my mindset with it is, look down the road, let's plan for it. Even if it's going to be, like I said, kind of a moot point, and a favorable or unfavorable recommendation does anything, stick to the guns. And, there is a message in that. Even if an unfavorable recommendation, I think, would likely do nothing, it does send a message, and, that will be carried forward. So in some way.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Does anyone else have any other follow-ups that we need to ask? Otherwise, we will thank our applicant. Okay, well, thank you, Steve. We appreciate you meeting with us this evening. Okay, so that applicant that needs to leave is here. So we are going to invite Rick to come off of mute. This is Rick York. And thank you, Rick, for making the timing work on your end. And thank you to all the applicants who are flexible with us this evening. So Rick, do you want to come off of mute and make sure we can hear you?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can. Perfect. Now, Rick, I'll just go back and explain the process really quick for you, just so that you understand what to expect. So each of us have one question. We are asking the same question of every applicant, and we're just going to go round robin, giving you an opportunity to respond. But before we do that, we'd love to give you a brief moment to introduce yourself. We've all seen your application, but if you'd like to let us know anything about yourself that you think would be useful before we go into questions, now is your time. Oh, okay. And I'm so sorry, Rick Garish, I see you waving your hand, and I don't know why.
Yeah,
can you see me or
on his camera?
We can't see you. We can only hear you. So Garish is wondering if it's possible for you to turn your video on. But
how about that?
There you are. Hello, Rick.
Okay,
Thank
now
you
I
for
can get
that.
I'm sitting in a car.
Well, we
I'll
appreciate you.
try and line up my face with the camera here. Is that better?
Perfect. And Kevin, or sorry, Rick, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Kevin will be kicking off the questions.
Okay, my name is Rick York. I've lived in Moab for 32 years. Same job the whole time. I've been the general manager at the potash plant. The things you've seen on my application are basically what I've done and what I do in a very short form. I do volunteer at my church. I've served on school board for many years. I've served on a rec board for a few years when we built the Pink Elephant south of town. Anyhow, and I'll just let you fire away on the questions. I don't really know what to say about myself. One other thing, I've got 4 kids that came up through the Grand County school system. Most of them while I was on the school board, so that was a pleasure to serve while they were matriculating. It was a good experience for me and hopefully for them. My wife and I plan to stay in Moab, and we have 1 child still in Moab. And I've got, like I said, 4 kids and 13 grandkids. The other ones spread out throughout Utah. Fire away.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So what, in your opinion, are some of the most important issues from a land use planning point of view that Grand County will face over the next year or two?
I've never been to a planning and zoning meeting, but I do read both newspapers and see what goes on. There's the expansion into San Juan County. One of the things I'm interested in, and I deal with it every day, is infrastructure. So how does all the new motels, the new housing, whether it be low income or anything else, how does that fit with the sewer plant? How does San Juan County fit with any of the plans of Grand County? And it's not just water, which I'm concerned about, but the power, the gas, and how does it all fit together for the benefit of the citizens of Grand County? And I think that's something that's coming. There seems to be a lot of the not in my backyard type thing. And that kind of goes against some of the private property concerns of people that say, well, I own it, so I should be able to do what I want. But there's always other things that need to be considered. So I think the planning and zoning is probably where that starts. That answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Why are you personally interested in applying for this appointment?
For the same thing I just said, I've watched from afar. I deal with a lot of these same things every day in my job. As far as what we use our land for, at the company I work for, and doing it the right way, right time, and start to finish. Like I said, I've lived in Grand County for 32 years. I know there's diverse opinions and lots of people that want to have input, and I like to listen to all the different sides. I think it's interesting to see all the opinions come in and where that takes us, and being part of that process, I think it can add to it.
Hi, Rick. What are your views of the planning effort right now in Grand County, the ongoing planning efforts?
At times I wonder, so how do we get so much commercial on the incoming corridor where does that go to? How does housing fit in? But, you know, I think I know that there's the what you call the overlays and that type of thing. And I think that there's been a lot of thought that goes into those. And I've looked at the ones that are out of my area along Spanish Valley Drive and that type of thing. And going in that direction looks like planning's been considered. Where we go from there and how that hooks up to San Juan County, I'm curious about. So obviously there's a lot of work that's gone into it. I don't think the whole county's planned out yet. And I know you guys are always approached for variances on what you've already planned out, because it doesn't always fit with the landowner's interest. So I think there's been work done, but there's always going to be work going forward. So, and being able to work with people when they come up with different ideas. So how does that fit in? So,
Thank you.
Hi, Rick. Josie here. So my question, you kind of talked about a little bit already, talking about San Juan County and sort of competing needs and interests. But my question is how the commission and the county can approach potential property owner and community like conflicts. And my example was, say, someone whose only path to affordable housing is through a high density development versus someone who really likes the rural character of Moab. And that's just one example of many, but in thinking about what can be a good approach to those kinds of perceived conflicts.
So you're asking about that conflict, is that for the individual who wants to move here or the person who wants to develop it?
It's more because I feel like Garish's question, which will be next, is kind of going to go more into public versus private, but a bit about like you were talking about not in my backyard, more like people who are just individual property owners or stakeholders in the community, and what they might see as different desires for what community planning and development looks like in this valley.
So I think you would take to them, you know, what's already planned and laid out and say, okay, how do you think, you know, your piece of property fits in here? Here's what's going to happen long term. Do you, you know, within the, I don't know if you call them restrictions or whatever, but within the plan for this area, this is probably what would work. Maybe if you want to do something different, you could apply for a variance here and let the planning commission and possibly the county commission consider it if it's a plan that seems to fit. On the other hand, if it doesn't seem to fit, maybe you ought to look in another direction. But I think it's always worth talking about, and most of the time, more heads are better than one until you get way too many. So.
Great, thank you.
Garish, I think you're muted still.
You think I know how to work this Zoom after all these meetings. So Rick, you haven't had a chance to hear other applicants answer this question. So you're maybe at an advantage or maybe a disadvantage. So as you probably are aware, there's an inherent tension at times between public interest and public property rights and private property rights. Our land use code allows for certain things to happen by right. In other words, if you're proposing something that is in a zone that is allowed by that zone, you have a legal right to it. At times, people apply for variances because the restrictions in the land use code don't allow them to do what they want to do exactly how they want to do it. So I was just curious as to what your thoughts are on the public interest, public rights, and private rights, and how would you sort out those sorts of that tension in your mind when there's a conflict that comes before the Planning Commission?
That is a hard question. I heard part of the prior gentleman's answer to that. So I was obviously, thinking of that. Can you still hear me? Because I lost my
can hear you.
picture. Okay. Obviously it'd be something that would have to be on a case-by-case basis. So I'm not so sure I could, there's always got to be a balance in things. At the same time, you have to follow the laws and you have to be consistent. You can't do something for one person that a year ago or 6 months ago you wouldn't do for somebody else. So you're always going to, whatever kind of groundwork you've laid, you may be stuck in that path, but there's always room for discussion too. So I'm, a big advocate of fairness and doing the right thing. So whatever discussion it takes to get to that, I'm for that, because I don't want anybody to feel like they've been unfairly treated. And if they feel that way and go away feeling that way, then the job hasn't probably been done right. There's probably going to be some instances where you never can come to to make somebody feel like they've been that way, but the effort needs to be made. So anyhow, but once again, it's a case by case thing, but you've got to listen to both sides and basically let your intellect and your heart tell you what's right. I believe in that too.
Rick, you've probably answered, you have answered pieces of this question in some of your other answers, but what in your background and skills recommend you most for a seat on the Planning Commission? If you could kind of summarize that.
Like I said before, I was on the school board for many years and served as a president for a while. I'm more of a behind the scenes worker. In my job, my mantra is I manage by walking around. I basically go around and find out what needs to be done. My job as a manager of my operation is to make everybody else's job easier and to make them able to do their job. So my style is pretty low key, not confrontational, willing to take input at the same time, willing to make decisions too. And the hard decisions usually come to me, and that's not a problem. Because usually by the time I have to make a decision, I have the inputs I need to make the right one, hopefully. So that's kind of what I bring is I like working with all different types of people, and believe me, I deal with all types every day. So, and enjoy people. So, but not on I'm not a type A, I'm a type B. So.
All right, thank you, Rick. And I will ask the last question. So we are a recommending body, not the rule setting body itself, which is the county commission. How does that change or affect the way you think about our role when it comes to short-term planning as well as long-term planning?
Basically you're working in guidelines. And so your recommendations to the county commissioner are going to probably follow those guidelines that the commission's probably ratified, I assume. And they're going to know what those are. So if you want to go outside the guidelines, you're going to have to present a pretty good case to them that they can defend to their constituency. So if you're gonna try and take them someplace they haven't been before, you need to help them, for want of a better word, sell it. And if not, then you basically work within the guidelines and make recommendations there. But on the other hand, be willing to do, if something needs to be changed, be able to make a case that's defensible for both the planning and the county commission.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any qualifying questions for Rick? All right, with that, Rick, well, thank you very much for joining us and helping out. I'm glad we were able to make it work. Have a great evening.
I'm sorry I'm looking so goofy here in the car, but I appreciate the opportunity here.
You are fine. Before you drop, because I know you do need to drop because you missed this at the beginning, we are going to be listening to all of the applicants and then we'll be voting. And so we will have a recommendation this evening. And if you are not able to join, you're welcome to email Mila following the meeting and she'll catch you up.
Thank you. I will be attending a school play here and it'll go quite late. So, but I appreciate you catching up with me. So
let the show go on. All right. Thank you, Rick.
Yes.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark, thank you for your flexibility. We appreciate you joining us. I know you've now heard the spiel a few times, but just for the sake of continuity, you'll have a moment to introduce yourself. We're trying to keep that to 3 minutes or less. And then everybody will have a chance to roundtable and ask you a question. So the floor is yours.
Well, it sounds good. Thank you for having me. And it's a very professional process, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity and to see it played out in the public. So my name is Mark Horowitz. What can I say? I've lived here for 35 years now. I came with a mountain bike and stayed about property in Castle Valley. Needed a job with some help. I bought a small restaurant on Main Street, which I cooked every day for 4 years, and sold that and bought my home now, where I've lived for 20 years. And I've been involved with the planning, the vision processing 2 times now, every 10 years. So 10 years ago and 10 years before that. It's been very interesting. Am I coming across okay? I don't want my internet cutting out.
We can hear you great.
I've got my phone standing by in the event that my internet should be cutting out. So that's enough for me now. I've lived here quite some time. I've seen our town change quite a little bit. Mostly for the better. And we have a thin veneer that we need to polish off, I think. So please, your questions.
Good, thanks, Mark. What, in your opinion, are some of the most important issues the county is going to face over the next year or two from a land use planning's point of view?
Now that the moratorium is over, and I look to the south end, the south entrance of town, from the city limits to the San Juan County line as an important opportunity. Now that we know we aren't going to get gigantic hotels, what can we do to develop that land between Moab City limit and the county line in some way that benefits the community, some way that benefits the school that's being built there. The south end of town has had precious little discussion, really, except for the moratorium and whatnot. I'll tell you, it's noisy down here. There's a lot of traffic. I think there needs to be some planning done with regards when spring comes. The highway is going to be a hazard, I think. I think that's an important issue to me. What else? If I may say, the upcoming vision update, I'm excited for that. This will be my 3rd, and I love to see how the vision for the future plays out as the future reaches us. Sometimes better, sometimes well, sometimes not so well. Sometimes the left hand has got to fix problems we inadvertently made in the past, while the right hand hopes to make things better for the future.
Then why are you personally interested in applying for this appointment?
I've been involved peripherally for 35 years. I've been very involved defending my neighborhood. 20 years ago, the May Estates subdivision proposed 38 duplexes. I was right on that and worked very hard with the Planning Commission and the council to mitigate that, what I would have called damage to my area. I watch every, as laborious as these meetings seem to you, I watch them at home, and I watch the council meetings at home. I will say, you may think you've heard from me quite a bit, but not nearly as much as I would like. I've never mentioned the south end of town or any of the other issues that have been important to me for quite some time, except in the events where I feel like I'm defending my neighborhood. Why am I interested? Well, I've applied for the Planning Commission a number of times over the years. It's been quite a few years, but I applied, I don't know, 4 or 5 times back in the when Dave Cousins was on and all the good old boys. I was a tree hugger then, and so it was no. Then I came up with, I approved a subdivision for my 13 acres that went all the way through the planning process and received rave reviews for responsible planning. Is my time up? Okay. Yeah, I'm
Hi,
very
Mark.
interested. I will say I'm especially interested in the upcoming vision update. I want to be a part of that, and I don't get enough opportunity with a 3-minute comment.
So Mark, what are your views of the current planning effort in Grand County?
Current views of what?
What are your views of the current planning efforts in Grand County?
I will say in the last 10 years ago, Grand County has really, really changed immensely. During the time that Zachariah Levine was in his position, the county moved from, I don't know, it was like there was one person down there you could call up, and well, things have changed a great deal in the last 10 years. I'm not even sure what to say. The things that come to my mind are, well, the small area plan. I'm right there with you. I really don't want to see drive-in theaters or drive-in, neon lights. I'm right there where most of us are. But I must say it's been frustrating for the gentleman who wants to develop up there to not be able to, what did he say? Tell me what you want me to develop out there. Well, I want to see more proactive planning especially again for the south end of town. And as Rick and Steve both mentioned, we're going to be merging with San Juan County in some way. I hope I've answered your question. If not, I've at least rambled along long enough.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark. So my question is about competing or what appear to be potentially competing interests of private property owners or community stakeholders. My example was the potential need of high density housing for people to be homeowners moving into the future affordably, kind of pitted up against what has traditionally been a very rurally charactered town. And that's one example of many where individual private stakeholders may perceive that they have very different interests in planning and development moving forward. What are your thoughts on that and the Commission's role in sort of treading that territory?
Well, Josie, I just want to start by saying I'm very impressed with your contributions to this Planning Commission. I am very impressed with your the way you've beheld yourself on this committee. The land use code would be my Bible. Here it is: to encourage orderly development of property with respect for private property rights of Grand County citizens. Well, to me, that puts citizens who live first. To facilitate provision of adequate transportation of sewer and water, promote development predictability. to prevent overcrowding of buildings and sites to the detriment of rural community character. Perhaps we need to decide what these terms mean. Protect the tax base, to discourage development that poses unreasonable, but to establish a process that effectively and fairly applies the regulations and standards. That's the land use code. While the land use code also provides for overlays, I'm not sure, I feel that the overlays that we have applied have necessarily been in parallel, in keeping with the land use code. The land use code is my Bible, and my tendency is to go easy on things. Look, you have rights on how can I say this? It so much depends on the case by case basis. Are we talking on a grand view, or are we talking about, well, the HDHO, for example? Yes, I can see how an HDHO development would utterly destroy the hopes and dreams of people in that neighborhood, and I'm conscious of that. I'm conscientious of that, and I stand for the community first. We need affordable housing. Well, one of the great mistakes of the past has been to allow overnight accommodation licenses to an entire area, Rim Village, for example. There would be where people would be living had that thought happened some 25 years ago. I guess I stand with private property rights. I know it does. You can't lay that comment over like the small area plan, because all I can say is with the dinosaur business that's out there, we were really lucky. It's a pretty attractive thing, but some really ugly things could go in there. I know we all want to prevent that. And together, I'm not like the president. Together we discuss these things, and I'm part of that discussion. I'd like to be.
Garish, it's your go. There you are.
Hey, Mark, good to see you again.
Thank you.
So
Gary.
you've kind of touched on it a little bit, Mark, already, but in your mind, hey, when there is a conflict between private property rights and the public interest, and also public property rights, how do you sort out conflicts in your mind, or how do you think you would sort out conflicts in your mind?
Can you give me an example of where that might happen? Other than the small area plan, for example?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Say you want to build a house closer to the property line than the code allows. And your neighbors have an interest in protecting distance from your house. Or say, for instance, there is a trail that goes through your property that's has been used historically, and you want to shut off access, or someone wants to shut off access to a historical trail. Or, I mean, there's a number of different things that could come up where people own the property, it's vested in them, but the public also has an interest in what they do and how they develop their property or what they do with it. So I'm just curious as to, in your mind, how do you kind of sort out public rights, public interest, and private property rights? Is that close enough for you, Mark?
Sure, Garish. The most clear example to me is the small area plan. We're trying to decide exactly what a guy could develop up there. But a good example is a trail, a historic trail. Man, I'd have to be part of a discussion, because I would tend to would tend towards a private property right. I believe, you know, part of being on a commission is hearing the discussion and being swayed by dint of that discussion. So I would love to be part of that. I'm not a hard, fast kind of guy on anything. I got to admit, I think I tend towards private property rights. Take, for example, the Spanish Trail. Well, let me get things. The Spanish Valley Trail, Spanish Valley Road they're planning a bike trail all the way out to the county line or to Ken's Lake or whatever. And I like the idea. I love the idea. But where I am a little frustrated is that as properties get developed along Spanish Valley Drive, the property developer is obligated to pay for that portion of the bike trail that it is in front of his property, her property. That doesn't make sense to me at all, when funding will surely be available for the entire project. And I don't like that particular part of the process. And then it's an example of private property rights. You know, you're making the property owner put in a 200-foot, or not even put it in, but wait until the funding comes for the rest of it, and then make him pay for his portion. Good example, Garish.
Garish, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here, Mark. It's just I was curious as to what your thoughts were. So thank you.
Well, there's no right or wrong, but there's clearly a right or left.
Bob.
Thank you, Gary.
So Mark, maybe you could kind of summarize what in your background and your skills recommend you most for this position.
That I've lived here for 35 years, that I love this place, I expect to die here, and I want to make a contribution. I've been involved with the process on various levels for all these years. I've been rekindled my interest. I've examined my ethics, my ability to overcome my bias, and I'm reasonably intelligent. I know the land use code. I designed my own subdivision and carried it through the entire process some time ago. I am critically able to confront my bias. And I'm reasonably intelligent. I have the time and the willingness. Is there anything else? I've got a good woman behind me.
All right, Mark, and final question, knowing that we are an advisory body, meaning that we make recommendations to the county commission, how does that change or affect the way that you see our role when it comes to short-term or long-term planning?
No, clearly the planning commission has a big role, because the county commission listens to the planning commission. Although a lot of times it's the MUN technicalities of details. For example, oh, I want to build my house into my easement. Those are pretty small things, but they're housekeeping details that cleans the carpet for the oncoming county commission to make their decision. So I think it's an important part. I want to see the planning commission be more proactive, especially with the upcoming vision update. Oh, I have ideas for, I would like to explore some ideas for making public comment much more accessible, especially during these COVID times. Let me tell you, it's hard to participate in this fashion, and not tonight, it's not, but normally it's very hard. It's very hard to get anything done with a 3-minute comment. Very hard. I cannot speak fast enough to say what I want to say in 3 minutes. So I'm hoping to be able to participate in some important decisions more in the future.
All right, well, thank you, Mark. Does anyone have any follow-up questions?
I would like to, if I may, since no one will ask a follow-up, I would say again, this has been a fine, fine process. Madam Chair, you may be congratulated, and I hope your example is carried through to the upcoming council as they approach appointing Ms. Hawk's position. Thank you all. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
All right. Josie, I think what we'll do is I'll go ahead and ask your question of you when your turn comes around in the circle for continuity. But we'd love to give you an opportunity to reintroduce yourself to the body, and then we'll go round table.
Sure. So hello, everybody. I'm Josie. And in addition to my bio from before 6 months ago, I have also had the honor and pleasure of serving on the commission for this past, I think, half a year, and have definitely learned a lot and see all the more that I can learn. So yeah, 15-year resident of Moab. Definitely see this as the place that I want to call home, and native to the Four Corners area, so very familiar with the region and all of its challenges and all of its assets. Grew up in Telluride, definitely a case study of warning to Moab. And in the 6 months of being on this commission, I feel like I have asked a lot of questions and tried to participate in this process to the best of my ability. And so, yeah, that's what I got. I'd love to continue.
Okay, Josie, what do you think are going to be the biggest issues facing the county over the next couple of years from a land use planning point of view?
Yeah, so a lot that have been mentioned and that I mentioned 6 months ago. And I think, especially after this summer, something that a lot of people in Moab are feeling are just the effects of industrial scale tourism in general, and kind of getting some whiplash to that. And so I see kind of addressing some of those specific effects of that sort of rapid scale development that has taken place, and really trying to double down on strengthening the community that has been here and continues to be here, and protect what really are the needs of the community that is here year round, that has been here year after year. So that is definitely continuing to work on creative solutions for affordable housing, and hopefully provide pathways to ownership for people who want ownership of property, but are coming into definitely a new economic landscape as far as the prospects of that. And also people who want affordable and humane rental properties if they just live and work here. I think that an issue of just really scaling down and slowing down development in Moab so that things can be done thoughtfully, and so that we can have a big picture lens towards sustainability, both for the obvious resource constraints of our community, but also in the larger picture of climate change and things that are happening rapidly on a global scale. And then some of those nitty-gritties like economic diversification, as many have pointed out, and ways that the commission can create those kinds of opportunities, or make the sort of organic nature of our development really start to bend more in that direction of making those things not only possible, but sort of inevitable. And figuring out how we are working with Southern Spanish Valley that is in San Juan County, and what that looks like for its continuity with Grand County. So yeah, I think that about sums it up.
And then why are you personally interested in applying for this appointment?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of opportunities to have opinions about this community, and it's a pretty small fishbowl, and it's easy to be fish and also feel a real stake in what's happening here. And I think I've definitely noticed myself on the side of having an opinion, but not always having a position of influence or making the effort to actually sway what happens in this community. And so by serving on the Planning Commission, it's definitely my both hope of influencing the process of how this community continues to shape and develop, both for myself and also for my family, which has chosen to live here, including my daughter, who I plan on raising here. And I lost my train of thought just a little bit. Let me catch it. Yeah, so I mean, a little bit of it is selfish in thinking about what I personally think are the amazing qualities of this community. I feel like when I moved here 15 years ago, you know, winters may have been hard, but there was this, especially coming from the Bay Area, there was this sweet spot of like affordability, really amazing community involvement, really amazing community, and you know, the ability to live in a beautiful place and have a really high quality of life without a lot of money. And I've seen that change. And so I definitely have kind of a selfish, but also selfish for people who might be like-minded, of trying to preserve those aspects of Moab, of making it a place where people can live and have a high quality of life without a lot of money. And really see if this is the process that works, if local government is an effective means of making change. And I think part of serving and part of my interest in serving is to really give my best effort at utilizing you know, the ways and means of change and influence and community strengthening and community development. So that is why I want to serve on the commission.
Thank you. Josie, been involved the last 6 months. What are your views of the planning effort right now, currently in Grand County?
Yeah, so I think of the last 6 months and what I've known a little more peripherally over the last couple of years, I do think that there has been a pretty solid kind of course correction in the county around things like the small area plan and really thinking of larger scale visioning around, you know, what development might look like in terms of choosing not to develop or in terms of conservation and preservation. The overnight accommodations moratorium is definitely part of that. I think in general, just an instinct with planning and with county commission to apply the brakes on a lot of things and really try to open up space to have the right conversations with the community, to get enough community input, and to really make thoughtful decisions around things that have longstanding effects. I think what I've generally seen has been really heartening. I admit that, you know, going like 10 years and beyond, I really had no awareness around planning and zoning or a lot of this world. And I don't really know the minutia of what happened then, because I think that a lot of what we're facing right now are things that were put in motion before a lot of us were even on the commission. And that I think is a huge challenge and something that I see where there have been maybe some past either mistakes or just lack of looking forward to seeing what possible things we might be facing down the road, and really having the foresight and the vision to apply the brakes sooner or to have more stopgaps immediately available to us as we saw those things coming. So love what I see happening now. I definitely see the frustration of maybe trying to mitigate things that already feel like a done deal.
All right, Josie, I don't think I'm going to do your question justice, but I'm going to try to restate it for the sake of consistency. For the sake of consistency. So as you see different tensions that come before this body and the community, tensions that both may see in favor of community interest, but are in conflict with each other. How do you approach that, and what's your general thinking around those issues?
Yeah. So this being my question, and I feel like this is something that I have definitely been learning just by serving on the Planning Commission, is, and honestly going before that, when a lot of the high density overlays were proposed on both the county and city level, I think I'm endlessly surprised at how much potential conflict there can be. I think I tend to think that, you know, everybody's always pro this or not pro that, and that really isn't the case, especially when it comes down to people's homes and what they want their home environment to look like. So I think part of my answer is that I'm always willing to have my mind changed. And that's a thought process that I'm, you know, going through with a lot of the things that have come across the commission's purview. I have heard a lot of comment from people who feel like they are losing, you know, the rural characteristic of this place. And I think that goes part and parcel with a lot of complaint that it's not a sustainable vocation to be a farmer here, which I do see as potentially a larger issue when it comes to something like economic diversification. So I think that, to kind of steal from Rick a little bit, that the kind of more heads, but not too many, you know, is important. I think it's important for there to be community voices that have lots of means of access points to the conversation, because I don't think that even with a diverse commission, all of those points of view are going to be heard. And I think it is interesting that a lot of times these larger issues might present themselves within the conversation around a very specific parcel or a very specific plan development. And I think that it's the commission's role to try as best as possible to be able to differentiate between what is just a minority that is really good at being louder than everybody else, and what really is like a compelling trend that maybe we haven't thought about, or that might alter the way we think about some of our overlays or the way we think about some of our land uses, and be willing to change our minds if there is sort of a compelling reason. And I think a lot of that does come from a lot of conversation and a lot of community input, and hopefully having the time and space to allow those things to sort of germinate and gestate. So I don't even know if I answered my own question that good, but those are kind of my current thoughts.
Okay, Josie, so you've heard this question several times before, but I'll repeat it as best I can. There is an inherent tension at times between private property rights, public interest, and public property rights. So in your mind, kind of how do you sort out the best solution when there are conflicts between those various interests?
Yeah, so I think this is a really important question, and not a very easy one to answer. And it does seem something that, you know, does very much come down to kind of a case by case examination, in which I may have like a very different kind of thought about that. I think fundamentally, as someone who has been a renter for most of my life, I maybe don't hold as quite so sacred property rights as maybe other people who are property holders might. And that has definitely informed a general philosophy around putting the public good and community interests over private property rights. I think a huge thing that is a law in life, and definitely as we are seeing in our community, that change is inevitable. It's kind of the only thing that we can count on. And so that means that even if you are a property holder, you know, I'm not saying that we should take away the rights of property holders or take away their property, but I think that sometimes there will be changes. And I think this isn't something that should be taken lightly. I do think that because property is given such a value in our society, that there is some sort of obligation to fulfill certain expectations of what it is to be a property holder, property owner. And I think that on the state level, there are a lot of safeguards to kind of make sure that that does happen here. But at the same time, I think that often there are compelling reasons for community interests and also for like ecological interests or wildlife interests to possibly supersede private property interests. And I think when those things happen, the Planning Commission, and by connection, hopefully the County Commission and county staff, can potentially think of whether changes need to be made in order to protect a greater future for everybody. I'm trying to think of, you know, something much more specific about that, but you know, I think one example, when Mark asked you for an example, that I think of is, you know, like recently putting a moratorium on new UTV rental companies. You know, that's things like that are kind of bold, potentially seen as affronts to private property rights, or what would be included in those rights. And I think sometimes there is a really important public interest that might supersede what property owners perceive as, you know, the totality of what they're entitled to by owning that property. But as the Planning Commission, and this will kind of go to your question, Emily, is I think we can be bold in recommending things like possible legislative changes, like a really, really good idea. And then it ultimately is up to the County Commission to make those changes, and also up to like the county attorney, who I trust very much, to kind of know whether that's actually within our power as a body.
And you've also heard this question, Josie. What in your background and in your skills, you've answered part of this also, but particularly recommend you for a position on the Planning Commission?
Yeah, so I see a few things. I'm definitely a Jane of all trades. I've had a lot of different vocations. And so that makes me very flexible, which I think is important with processes like this, to be able to learn new things and sort of see things in new ways on a regular basis. I would actually say a lot of my like restaurant work and production work, which is sort of those thinking on your feet jobs, are kind of good preparation for just the mindset of problem solving. And I think what I'm starting to see a lot with like a body like the Planning Commission and sort of local government in general is the need for a problem solving mindset, because it's kind of like most of us can see what the problems are, and you know, can kind of shake our heads at it. But I tend to be the type of person where if I really look at something for the right amount of time, I'm like, okay, let's find the place where this works, or where something can move forward, or where there's like a little tweak here that can actually make everything suddenly, it's like a, you know, kind of a tinkering engineering. So I think I come with that disposition based on a lot of my sort of, yeah, those kinds of jobs. And then I was also working with nonprofits in Moab for 15 years when I'm not waitressing or bartending or doing production work. You know, there are a lot of cross sections of Moab, not all of them equally represented, I would say, in points of power and local government, or you know, places in the economy where dollars speak pretty loudly. And I feel like through that nonprofit work, I've gotten to hear a lot of different perspectives. I've gotten to interact with a lot of people who have stakes in this community and sort of understand how this community functions as a whole organism. And then lastly, and I mentioned this at the my first interview, just being able to build my house here and build a very modest house on a kind of a shoestring budget. I think my hope, which is that that can be kind of the scale and the vision of a lot of development moving forward, which is kind of like of the people, by the people, for the people. I think Moab, people who live and work in Moab should have greater say in the vision of what their town looks like and how it's shaped, be that people being able to build their own houses, even if they don't have the economic means that you might think they need, or being able to shape what our commercial sectors look like, what our neighborhoods look like, what our view sheds look like. So I think having that hands-on experience of really being able to shape the environment really confirmed for me how important that is for a community. Yeah.
All right, Josie, and you did sort of touch on my question already as well, but I'll ask it. And I think for you, it's largely a reflection. Given that we are a recommending body, how does that change how you see our role in the community as it relates to short-term planning and long-term planning? Yeah, and I think this is a really, it's almost like being a judge and whether you're, an activist judge or not. And I think that we have an interesting role in that we could just be this kind of like rubber stamping organization, because there is a clear land use table and there is zoning and codes that have already been written in. And so there could just be like very what that means. There are always interesting examples where it's not so black and white, and that in itself is interesting. But I think beyond that, there is a real ability of the Planning Commission to have its task be towards larger visioning and sort of creativity with that, and definitely some boldness with that, and an ability to look at our current sort of laws and land use tables and be able to say, is this still relevant? I've seen that happen with the small area plan where, with very clear public input as a guiding post, it was really, I don't want to say easy, but it felt very clear to kind of say, okay, we have to revisit a lot of this. And so I think going forward, I would be very interested at what are potential avenues for the Planning Commission to make recommendations to the County Commission as far as things that the County Commission might actually do to make those kinds of changes as needed, because ultimately it will be up to them. But I think we can have a huge hand in sort of establishing that vision that might pave the way for some of those changes as they might occur. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, any follow-up questions for Josie? All right, so we had 2 additional applicants who applied, and during the meeting, one has withdrawn due to timing, and the other is unresponsive and did not sign in. And given the fact that we are winding down the year and we have had several applicants who did show up, we are going to go ahead and move forward into voting. So thank you to all of our applicants who took the time to, first of all, apply. It's a daunting process. Everyone here has been through it, some more than once. And thank you for your time and your respect of the process. So how we are going to run this is an exception that is in our bylaws. Traditionally, we do voice voting, but given the number of seats, we are going to do a blind vote. And at the top of the meeting, all of the commissioners tested either a private text or the private Zoom DM with Mila. If you're going to do it with Zoom, just make sure you haven't changed your settings since the beginning of the meeting. Every commissioner is going to send to Mila the 3 names that they think would be the strongest recommendation to the county commission. There's no stack ranking, so you don't have to worry about the order you're sending them. Mila will tally the total number of votes that each person got. And if we have 3 people with the outright majority of votes, we'll send that recommendation through. Otherwise, we will hold a tie-breaking vote if necessary. Garish.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know Josie's seat and Kevin's seat will be vacated at the end of December. What is the 3rd seat? Oh, Rachel's? Is that right? Oh, Rachel.
I need a break. Maybe I'll reapply the next time, but I need a little break. Homeschooling my kids this year has really beat me up.
It's a tough year for, yeah. So yes, so Rachel has indicated that she is not reapplying this year. So with that, take a moment to collect your thoughts and then send your 3 names to Mila, and then Mila is going to send me the tally and we'll announce them following the vote. We need a Spotify soundtrack for this.
So while we're waiting for the votes to be tallied, I guess there's another issue, and maybe we can just punt this to the county commission, but these 3 seats are not all the same. I think my seat just has 1 year left and the other 2 are 4-year appointments. So someone's got to decide who gets the 1 year seat.
Yeah.
Like I say, we don't have to do that this evening.
We don't have to do that this evening. I'll put a proposal out on the table that we can have some conversation about, that we might send our top 2 applications, so the top 2 recommendations for the longer term and our 3rd choice for the shorter term, as a way of sort of indicating relative strength. But if there are other ideas, why don't we have that after the vote, and feel free to propose other alternative recommendations that we can send through.
I'm just waiting on OB.
Yes, I'm having trouble. I've got it on my screen on the message to you. Now, what do I have to do? Because
You
I
should be able to
did it,
just hit enter.
and I think I did.
And Bob, if you get stuck, you can email Mila as well. That is a fallback.
Yep, or text me or.
Oh wait, you're muted, Bob. You accidentally muted yourself. Yeah.
Did you say email you?
You can email me. Yep, that's fine.
Oh, then I'd have to know her email address, but I bet I can find it. Let's hang on here.
Bob, you should be able to just type in the names and then click enter, and the message will go to her.
So I did type in the names, and I have on the bottom, it says Mila Dunbar. And when I hit enter, I guess nothing happens. I'm guessing. Let me try it one other place. There it went.
Okay. Did
Got
that go
it.
through?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, that went
Perfect.
through. Okay.
You have to do it in the message, not in the chat box here, but you have to be down at the message. I now know.
Okay, so Emily, I texted you the results. We have two
Okay.
clear seats, and then we have a tie for the third one. So how do you want to do that?
So here's going to be my recommendation. Since we have two clear seats up front, I recommend that I think we need to vote on this and send a motion through. Mila, is that correct?
Vote on which?
Do we need to send an official motion? What I was going to recommend is that we move. I think somebody else would need to make the motion, but if there's interest in making a motion to recommend the top two vote getters for the full term seats, and then we'll have a runoff vote for Kevin's shorter term. Is there general agreement with that approach?
Who are the top two vote getters?
Okay, so our top two vote getters are Josie Kovash and Steve Evers, and then there's a tie for the third position. So is there interest in that motion? In which case, if someone wants to make that, we can kind of cleanly send the two, and then that way the county commission doesn't have to negotiate the issue. Garish?
I make a motion that we send the top two vote getters to the county commission as our recommendation, and that we then vote again for the one-year term seat.
Okay, so
Second.
let's take the motion. So seconded by Bob. So Garish, I'm going to actually just take the first part of your motion and make sure Bob was seconding. Garish moves to send a recommendation that Josie Kovash and Steve Evers be appointed for the two full-term seats on the Planning Commission. Bob, was that the motion that you seconded? Okay, so all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Kevin, I don't know if you're frozen or if you're stoic. All right. Oh, yes. Okay, so that is unanimous. Thank you. And then Josie, who were the two that were tied?
I'm assuming you meant Mila, but
oh, sorry, that was
that's okay.
Carrie. Thank you.
The tie is between Makeda Barkley and Rick York.
Okay. So we'll do one more blind vote. So this time, just please vote for one person between Makeda and Rick, and send it to Mila. Bob, you can do it in Zoom Master, and then we'll have a motion for them. Do you have everyone in?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. One, two, three, four, five, six. Okay, it's 4-3. Is that good enough for our?
That's good. That is the
All
standard.
right.
Yeah.
So Makeda is our next commissioner for that one then.
Okay. So I think just for the sake of, being consistent, we'll take a motion on that for the shorter period. Thank you. Garish.
I move that we recommend Makeda as the one-year term commissioner.
Second.
Okay, motion by Garris, seconded by OB. All in favor? Okay. Kevin, I didn't see your hand again. I assume, yes, thank you. Okay. So unanimously, we recommend Makeda Barkley for the shorter term to fill Commissioner Walker's seat. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I know that these processes are always long, but it's always wonderful to hear from multiple people in the community who are applying. And that takes us into future considerations, which Garish has one, and then I have a topic to raise as well related to scheduling.
So several years ago, when I was chair, I suggested that we try to have a workshop or a joint meeting with the Moab Planning Commission just to communicate what, kind of where we think we're going. And I also think it would be important for us to try to do the same thing with the with the San Juan County Planning Commission. And there's a meeting place that we could probably use, which is the GWSSA building, which makes it easier for those people that don't have to drive all the way into Moab or try to find a meeting place. But I think it's really critical at this stage that we communicate with our neighbors and talk about the challenges and opportunities that we see. So I would like that to get some emphasis by the chair and staff to make it happen, because we've talked about it before. It just never seems to be a high enough priority to come to fruition. And I think it's really important. That's it.
I fully agree with you. I would really like to see that happen. I think this year there's been some obvious difficulties that have, made it more challenging to figure out what that sort of coming together might feasibly look like, given the fact that we don't have existing communication. So Zoom is not really great. But no, I fully agree with you, Garish. Kevin, I saw you wanted to comment as well.
Yeah, I mean, my internet keeps cutting out, but I think Garish was talking about the importance of coordination between Moab City, Grand County, and also Spanish Valley. And I also think that's very important. There's kind of San Juan is a big, diverse county. And so a sort of alternative idea to what Garish proposed would be to, port some kind of, informal coordinating body with representatives from the three entities. The advantage of doing it that way is that you could actually get people who live in northern San Juan County, as opposed to the Planning Commission, which is people who live in Monticello and Blanding. And I just think it would be more useful and appropriate if we had people who live in this area. So consulting with them.
I appreciate that. And I see where you're coming from. But no matter where they live, I think it's important for the Planning Commission in San Juan County to hear from us what we think our concerns are and hear our opportunities, because they do serve the same role that we do. They make recommendations to the legislative body down there. And my recommendations holds. I think we should meet body to body. I'm not saying that, I don't see a role for us to play officially with San Juan residents. They're welcome to attend meetings there, but what I'm talking about is kind of a quasi-government to quasi-government or commission to commission level discussion. Not that we would reach out to citizens of San Juan County to meet with us one-on-one. I'm not saying that that's a bad idea. I think that's something that maybe it's more appropriate for an invitation to them if the county commission wants to have that kind of feedback. But I'm talking about something totally different than meeting with, I'm talking about like a sit down workshop or just a discussion with our peers in San Juan County. And it's not, I don't feel there's a need for us to sit down with citizens of Moab either. I just feel like that there's merit to what you're talking about. I think it's important to get a full range of opinions and ideas, but I'm talking about a commission to commission type meeting.
Okay, but I don't know how close attention you've been paying to San Juan County, but the pattern over the last year or two has been that the Planning Commission makes one recommendation to the San Juan County Commission, and then a coalition of Northern San Juan County residents makes a contrary recommendation, and the County Commission always sides with the residents rather than the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I've been watching that. I know.
They don't seem.
There is a very vocal an interested group of San Juan County citizens who live in Spanish Valley. I'm aware of that. And they do seem to have quite a bit of influence on two of the commissioners in San Juan County. I'm talking about a planning commission to planning commission type meeting. So it's a different thing.
So let me make this recommendation. So first and foremost, I think Kevin, Commissioner Walker, now that you are becoming County Commissioner Walker, knowing the challenges of this body particularly, it would be wonderful to get to see kind of to what you're describing, what might a cross-county working group or any sort of, non-official body look like. I think that's a great idea. Related to the planning commissions and keeping in mind what you said, and also the logistics right now of just getting a large number of people together in person. Would there be interest in trying to find an opportunity for the chairs and vice chairs of the three bodies named to see if we can try and at least get those folks together after we've elected our new chair and vice chair in the coming year? And then aim for maybe something, if it makes sense and if it's feasible, later in the summer across the bodies. Would there be general support for that?
I just think one last comment is I think similar efforts are going to be going on at the county commission and city council level. And so you might want to coordinate with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's completely agree. I think that this is something that needs to be more broadly taken on as a county across all of our different groups. I'm so sorry. My cat is screaming at me to leave the door. I'll be right back in half a second.
I thought it was my cat.
Just everybody's making noise these days. We're all stuck inside, the kids, the cat.
I enjoyed listening to your cat.
She's very nice, actually. Girish, totally appreciate your comments. Any other comments on that before we move on to another topic of discussion for future considerations? Okay, so another issue to pick up going into next year is scheduling. So prior to this year, we were meeting on the first and third Tuesdays, I believe, right? This year we moved to the second and fourth Mondays. Staff has asked that it might make more sense to split the difference and coordinate with the county commission, which meets on theirs is somehow different because we're aligned with them this week and we're not aligned with them. So I don't know exactly what their schedule is, but.
That's because this week there was a Monday and Tuesday in opposite months. So they have 5 Tuesdays and there are 4 Mondays.
Gotcha.
So they're on the first and third Tuesdays.
So the question is because we do need to get back to the county for scheduling so that we can post next year's, notice next year's meetings. Is there alignment with staff to move to the first and third Mondays of the month as opposed to the second and fourth Mondays of the month? Same time, different day. Garish?
One of the considerations that we had when we changed was, and I think Jaylyn brought it up, that with our packets and the commission's packets, it's a lot to try to handle in 1 week for whoever the liaison is. So to me, it really doesn't matter, but I would say if Jaylyn wants to weigh in, that's a consideration that I think we need to be, we need to consider being considerate to the workload of whoever the liaison is.
Jaylyn, I don't know if you're still on, but if you are, do you have any comments to that?
I am still on. I mean, this time it wasn't a big deal because this packet was maybe 24 pages and mostly applications. Sometimes this commission has pretty huge packets. So I do agree with Garish on that. I mean, I feel like part of the liaison's job is to be familiar with the packet and be able to contribute if they're asked to. So I took it pretty seriously that I would go through the packet prior to this commission meeting. So yeah, you know, others may view their responsibility differently, and they may not, it may not matter to them. To me, it would have been difficult, but I would have done whatever this body agreed on.
All right. And Mila, from staff's perspective, is there anything we need to be, okay.
Yeah, so the reason that I am proposing that change is largely due to the noticing requirements, because that, you know, meetings need to be, public hearings need to be noticed up to generally 3 weeks beforehand, just because of the way that the Times Independent is just a weekly paper. And so, and it gets published on Thursdays. So I think that just having the extra meeting kind of in between each, the Planning Commission, the County Commission meetings, having them staggered like that makes the noticing a pretty complicated affair. And it also seems like it adds a little bit of time for the applicants to then be able to get onto, you know, kind of a next meeting for County Commission, because there's that staggered gap in between when we can't notice it. So we would be able to be noticing Planning Commission and County Commission meetings in the same papers, because they would be on the same schedule.
Can I just add one more thing, Emily?
Mm-hmm.
So having thought about it for just a half a minute or so, while Mila was talking, it really might not be a big deal, because this body would consider issues that wouldn't come to the council until probably minimum of 3 weeks later. Is that right, Mila?
Mm-hmm. At least the next meeting or the one after.
So, you know, while 3 weeks later, the liaison would have, you know, say it's 100 pages that came from this body, that liaison for the meeting 3 weeks hence, or whatever it turns out to be, has an easier time with their own commission packet, because they are already thoroughly familiar with this commission's packet. So, you know, once things played out for a month or two, it might not really be that big of a deal. But my other question for you, Mila, is that I know that when we had a different person in charge, he felt like that was very hard on staff to be preparing for both council meeting and Planning Commission meeting in the same week. How do you feel about that?
I think that things have changed a bit with our relationship with the county attorney's office. And so at this point, preparing for county commission packets has mostly already happened for staff. Since we do have attorney review now on all land use items, which we didn't have before, we've done the largest part of our, the bulk of our work, except for some edits potentially, a few weeks ahead of time before county commission packets are due. So I think that's changed a bit since previous staff.
Okay, well then I would say this commission should, I mean, there is the citizen perspective as well. And if this helps with noticing requirements, there's that to consider. And like I said, after more consideration, I don't think it would be a huge deal. It's easy for me to say because I won't be in this position next year, but I really honestly think it might not be such a bad thing.
So I propose that we change our schedule to the first and third Mondays starting next year. Is there anyone who'd like to propose something else? Otherwise, we don't need to formally vote on this, but we will send information to the county who will notice those changes ahead of next year.
Just one, I mean, I don't, I'm not going to say much about this, but I just wonder, once you know who the liaison is going to be, would it make sense to put their wishes or schedule into the mix, or do you think you should just decide ahead of?
We have to notice it ahead of time. So that's the challenge, is the county is sending all of the updates to the papers. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I would recommend that we go this path. And unless anybody has any issues to not go this direction, I'll let the county staff know. Yeah. Okay. Any other items for future considerations? So for those of us who will be joining us next year, this means that our first meeting will be the first Monday after the new year. And you will have plenty of time to get up to speed on how that process goes. At the start of the year, we will also open our first meeting with an election for chair and vice chair. So there's no automatic term carryover. We all vote again. And in the meantime, if you are joining and you have any questions about process and you want to reach out to me or to Mila, you're very welcome to do so. So you can feel like you are joining, ready to hit the pavement. So
Emily, just one more thing. We would need to reconfirm the time of the day that the meetings are going to happen.
Does the 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. block and then 5 p.m. rolling for public hearings work for everybody? I have felt like that's been great. Okay, cool. I am going to actually pause my, go ahead, Kevin.
I think the first Monday in January occurs before the first county commission. So you might not have all the new planning commissioners until a couple of days later in January.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Because I guess we'll just, can we allow them to attend and listen in and we just won't take their vote on any?
Anyone can attend as a citizen.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take that one.
But
We
would
just,
you
I don't
have
know that we have
quorum?
we might not have a
Yeah.
quorum. So we could just cancel that meeting, or we could have a discussion.
Maybe that first, would everyone be okay with just that first meeting being a little off and doing 2 weeks in a row? Because I think that first meeting is important. It's an opportunity for us to welcome our new members. And it's also, I think, a time that we can have an open conversation about where we want to be that year, those big priorities we want to focus on. We can call it a workshop so we don't feel like we're going to meetings 2 weeks in a row, but would everyone be okay with that? Okay, let's do this. Mila, let's formally cancel that meeting in the sense of we won't have any action items or public hearings. And on email, let's find time for, let's figure out a time that works, whether it's the following Monday or another day that week, that we can hold a workshop, and then we'll notice that appropriately so that the public can attend and use that time for setting future planning, talking about priorities in play, and just sort of reflecting on the last year. Is that acceptable to everyone? Garish and Kevin, I saw both of you want to make comments.
I think Kevin brings up a good point, and my recommendation is that we defer our first meeting in January until after the commission appoints new members.
Yep, that's what I'm proposing. So that
but no workshop in between. Let's just wait until the appropriate time when we can get a quorum to have the first meeting.
And I was going to propose a variant, I think, on both your ideas, which is you just, in the official announcement in January, you meet the second and third, or second and fourth Mondays, whatever you choose. And then all the other months, it's the first and third, or whatever.
I think that's acceptable. I think that's great. And that kind of satisfies both. Given just the amount of things coming up next year, things that we know are still on the back burner, such as looking at the airport. The Southern Corridor is an area that we have brought up in the past, as well as looking ahead to general plan. I just think it would be a shame. I know we're all zoomed out, but I just think it would be a shame to lose that time to plan. So I think Kevin has a good middle ground. So if everyone is okay with that, those who will be on the body or anyone.
What was the conclusion again? Sorry.
So January doing the second and fourth Monday, and then moving forward to the first and third following that. So just adjusting the dates in January.
And then the first. Okay, so we would just have a meeting on the 25th of January and on the 1st of February. So those would be stacked. Right?
No, Mila, I think what Kevin is suggesting is that in January is an exception to the rest of the calendar. That
right.
We'll meet on the second Monday rather than the first Monday.
So the second and the third Monday of January?
I actually made two different suggestions. Yeah.
But what I'm suggesting is you may have an idea as to how many proposals we'll be considering at that first meeting in January. And if it's not, if it doesn't look like there are any hearings that would be postponed, I suggest that we just go with the schedule that our first meeting falls after the commission appoints the new members.
So that would be on the 11th of January, which is the second Monday. And then the question is, when do you want to have the next meeting? So at some point, if we're switching the schedule, there's going to be 2 Mondays in a row that we meet. So would we want to have it on the 11th and then on the 18th, and then we're on the first and third Mondays, or second and fourth Mondays in January, and then there's a meeting on the 25th of January and the next week on the 1st of February?
I think we're overthinking this. Let's do the first and third. Let's cancel our first meeting in January, and let's separately plan a workshop for the week of the 11th, which I think it would be useful for us to come together as a body and spend, it doesn't have to be a full blast meeting, but just sort of come together.
So the 11th,
if it's
and
not
the
an
18th.
official meeting, we can't elect the chair, can we? Or can we do that?
No.
Okay, then I'm going to say, I recommend that we move our first meeting to the, move our first meeting to the 11th. So our first official meeting will be the 11th. We'll have another meeting on the 18th. Staff is not going to be adding public hearings or thick agenda items on the 11th. We'll use the 11th for setting our bylaws, electing chair and vice chair, and just sort of way setting going into the next month. And I think that just keeps us sort of plowing forward and allows us to get the utility stuff out of the way. Okay, so I do just want to pause. I realize it's already 6:30, but since we were doing interviews, we did not do citizens to be heard at 5. And just, I do want to make sure that if there are any citizens who do want to speak, you have a chance to do so. I know that one citizen posted a question in the chat, and I didn't know if he wanted to speak or just have a question posed, and then we'll finish off our last 2 items and adjourn.
Yeah, this is Michael of Namaste Rock. And so I see that we have some things laid out. Is it possible to have a garden in this area? It seems to be excluded that only native plants. It would be nice to be able to grow fruits and vegetables for personal use. But it seems to be excluded from what's available there.
So I think we'll give staff an opportunity to respond if they think it's the best forum. It probably seems like something that staff may be able to better address off the meeting, just as far as sort of pointing to where in the code your question applies. But Mila, do you have any comments you want to make now? Otherwise,
Yeah, I think
I thought we were dealing with landscaping. When the consideration about native plants, I didn't realize that there was any ambiguity about that.
Yeah, I don't think that there would be a prohibition against a small garden, but since the small area plan code amendments have not been passed yet, we won't be able to really make those determinations until probably on January 5th area. Around then, that should be when the vote happens. And at that point, it'll get incorporated into the use table, and then we'll be looking at that Article 3 for the allowed uses in the zone. And, you know, I don't think any commercial agriculture is not contemplated as being allowed, but I think a backyard garden certainly wouldn't be prohibited in any zone.
Yes, certainly my recollection of the discussions, I don't think anyone ever intended to exclude, you know, personal gardens or something like that. And I can't recall any part, you know, I don't have it in front of me, but I don't think that's prohibited by the letter of the proposed law either.
all right. Thank you for your comments. Michael, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, are you guys gonna, I know you created the plan, but I don't know that you've voted on it. Are you guys gonna send a recommendation to the council, or maybe that's not appropriate in this case?
We did send a recommendation in favor of it to the county commission. They're discussing it in tomorrow evening's meeting. There's a public hearing where you are welcome to submit your comments ahead of time over email or by attending and making comments, or both. And then they will have their vote that first meeting in January, formally determining whether or not to adopt it. All right.
I make a motion, we adjourn. Is there anything else?
Sure. Does anyone want a second? Any concerns about skipping the building permit review, or are we all good?
Oh.
Nope, you're fine. You're welcome to make the motion. Seconded by Brian. All right. So all in favor of the motion to adjourn now?
Aye.
Everything's in the packet? All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Okay, now it's over.